There's a famous experiment where they took law students, and they said, okay, we're going to give you material for a real case. And some of you would be, the plaintiff, and the other one would be the defendant. Read the materials and then tell us what you think a fair judgment would be. And you could see that this mere division, giving them the role, you were either plaintiff or defendant, changed the way they analyze the same fact, the same data.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. 20-Minute Leaders is a proud supporter of Make-A-Wish Israel and Tech to Peace, and is in proud collaboration with Secret Chord Ventures, J Ventures, Riverside FM, Fusion VC, Birthright Excel, J Impact, Leap, Google for Startups, and Hippo, and in media partnership with CTech. Hello, and welcome to another episode of 20-Minute Leaders. This is a really cool episode about mediation and about conflict resolution. Looking at it from a different angle, I learned a ton from this episode, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you do as well. Meet Dr. Tal Rotman, a partner and chair of alternative dispute resolution in Pearl Cohen, a prominent law firm in Israel. He has extensive experience in mediating and litigating stakeholders' disputes in startup companies. Previously, he was a consultant at the New York office of McKinsey and Company, taught in Tel Aviv University School of Law, and clerked for the Israeli Supreme Court. He holds a Ph.D. in law, a master's in psychology, an LL.M. in commercial law, LL.B. and BA in accounting from Tel Aviv University. He also earned an LL.M. in corporate law from New York University, where he was a Hauser Scholar. Enjoy this episode. Tal Rotman, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for joining me all the way from the Pearl Cohen offices. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Everything is cool here. It's 30-something degrees, it's centigrade, so you don't understand how hot it is, but still, life in Tel Aviv.
I love it.
You'll get the picture finally in California, eventually.
Exactly.
There as well.
Your work is so interesting, and I'm so excited to understand a little bit better what you do. Within Pearl Cohen, you're partner and chair of alternative dispute resolution,
Right.
with experience in mediating and litigating stakeholders' disputes in startup companies. You were also with McKinsey and Company, lecturing in Tel Aviv University, and you were clerked for the Israeli Supreme Court with a Ph.D. in law, master's in psychology, and many more titles, both in academia and elsewhere. I'm not going to do it justice, but Tal, safe to say that you've had a hand in working with fascinating people and fascinating organizations at world-class level. And so I'm especially excited to hear sort of what motivated you throughout your career, and how did you sort of figure out your own path and what's important to you. So Tal, thank you very much for spending these 20 minutes with me.
Perfect. Well, everything happens by mistake. Like if you plan things and God laughs, right? So it's not really the things that happen the way you plan them. They just move along and you try to enjoy the way.
So what do you enjoy? Because you've sort of done so many incredible things. Where do you get your own enjoyment from?
So at this point, everything comes together with this business mediation thing. Because I've been litigating cases in Israeli courts for many years now, and it's a very inefficient way to solve problems between business associates. And people get there and represent them, and they make a living doing that. But this is not what I would recommend to my brother or a family member who find himself or herself in a dispute. It's just especially when it comes to high-tech companies. So, high-tech companies, they grow very fast. They start very often on a very trendy basis with inexperienced people. And then in some point, if they're lucky, it booms, right? Then everything changes, and changes very, very fast. And at this stage, so many things could happen. There's so much friction. And it's fast growing, so much that people just need to be an angel, not to have some argument. And some argument lead to dispute. And what I think it's very sad is to see people that founded the company together, that were good friends, they had a vision, and now there's some sort of a stupid dispute that ended up in litigation. Because then the company could go down the drain as well. So it's just not a matter of just helping people, it's also helping the company. And it's really, really nice because it brings together what I've done in the past, which is in the worlds of law, of accounting, of psychology, of litigation. And the whole idea of mediation is that instead of going to a judge or arbitrator, which is essentially a judge that you hired, right? It's a private judge, but it's still a judge. There's someone who needs to hear this side and that side, and then decide who's right. Like the mediator is a totally different philosophy. It's someone that is experienced and hear both parties, and he has absolutely no power to decide on anything. The only thing I could do is bring together people where they say, okay, we agree and we sign a contract, basically resolving the issue. And so you have absolutely nothing, right? There's no sword, there's no decision power. It's basically your experience, what you've seen, what you've gathered throughout life. And the outcome could be remarkable because instead of people ruining their relationship, spending in Israel like months and years in court, spending really large amounts of money and on lawyers and legal fees, losing nights, sleeping at night, and they end up ruining the company. So they end up working for nothing. And it's really, really sad. And when you manage to do this trick where they're all happy, then it's like magic, right? It's just people that they feel unburdened with what they're carrying. A dispute is such a heavy burden, and they're so relieved, they're thankful. So it's really rewarding. And
I definitely can. I can feel the sense of sort of coherence in what you're saying and how you're bringing together all these facets from your experience from psychology to accounting to commercial law to corporate law, and bringing that together to understanding where mediation is taking place. But what allowed you to come to that realization? I haven't met many people that are as excited and passionate about this idea of mediation that you're coming from and this intersection of disciplines. How did this start for you? How did you get here?
It started gradually, right? No one starts with being old, smart, and wise. It usually starts like young and reckless, and you gather some information along the way, and you learn better, right? So I've been my profession to represent people in courts. I see courts, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Hopefully, you win more than you lose, but it's just a problematic process. People are always so disappointed coming out of it, and they're so emptied, and they're such a disappointment. That even if they won the case, it's just they want to get rid of it at the end of the day. And the great thing about mediation is that you have tools that the judge does not have. So at the end of the day, it's much about economic and cognitive psychology than anything else. Because imagine two people are coming in front of a judge, and each one is knows that the judge can decide, right? At the end of the day, he will decide, or she. So each one would tell just part of the story, right? Maybe the truth, but not the whole truth. And as a mediator, you can meet people separate. So you would sit with the party, and whatever they tell you is underconfident. So you would not reveal it without their proof, and they tell you what the real story is, and then you hear the real story from the other side, and then sometimes you see so much, new avenues, many new avenues, potential solutions that they don't see, and
how much of it comes down to misunderstandings? Miscommunication, misunderstandings between people that are not necessarily being totally open and transparent about what they really feel or what they really need or want in a situation?
Okay, so this is where cognitive psychology enters, right? This is
Right.
where you have the biases, the cognitive biases, Tversky, Kahneman, Dr.
Yes.
Lawrence for those experiments. But at the end of the day, what is very interesting is that people, they have a self-serving bias, right? So even if they agree on the fact, and there's no argument about the fact, they would still think that, things leaning to their favor. So there's a famous experiment where they took law students, and they said, okay, we're going to give you material for a real case. And some of you would be, the plaintiff, and the other one would be the defendant. Read the materials and then tell us what you think a fair judgment would be. And you could see that this mere division, giving them the role, you are either plaintiff or defendant, changed the way they analyze the same fact, the same data. And that's without emotional involvement, without being personally involved in all that. So people would actually look at the same picture and feel differently about it. You think you're right, and then maybe you are right from your perspective, and but your friend or your ex-friend, who's now your enemy, he's right from his side. And sometimes, as an observer, you can say, "Well, yeah, I can see why both of you are feeling this way, and maybe there's a solution that would keep both of you both happy. At least there would be some settlement that would make sense, right? And if it makes sense, both parties agree, and you have a resolution, and you finalize this conflict has ended in few hours instead of a few months or years, and not just of the huge savings of money here. But you come with a solution who is sometimes a business solution. But remember, if you go to court or to arbitration, you have to stick to legal argument. So you come to your lawyer, you tell them a story, and they say, oh, this is not relevant, this is not relevant, this is, oh, but this point, yeah, let's make the whole case around it. Why? Because there's some legal right involved there, which was infringed. So there's a legal argument. So they take reality, they translate it into legal words, and then the court decide on the legal stuff. But it is not the real argument. The real argument is a business argument sometimes. Sometimes it's an emotional argument. Sometimes it's people having different interests or, different opinion. And in court, you have to frame everything in terms of legal rights. And this kind of distorts everything, right? And then you lose control over it because you handed control to the lawyer that you don't understand what they're saying. And they come back to say, okay, we won, we lost, whatever. You totally lost control. But if you were there, and we talk about the real issues with someone who's the plaintiff and has the incentive to help you, because otherwise, it's a failure for me as well.
Right.
Then sometimes the magic happens.
Is there ever an advantage to going to sort of arbitrage or legal proceedings in court rather than a mediator? It almost seems to me trivial that mediator is sort of always the better option because it allows for everything that a court allows except for that final decision, with sort of this cognitive psychology and sort of the emotional aspect of the real story being told.
Look, in reality, most people don't go to mediation.
Why?
And I think that's a market failure. I just wrote an article about that.
Okay.
For a law review, I said it's a market failure because people think, I've actually tried to settle with this guy. I tried to be reasonable with him. He wouldn't listen, right? So right now, if I tried, and business people, they're comfortable negotiating. So it's not that they come to me after they haven't talked to each other. Usually they did talk to each other and failed. So they think, why would a third person who knows nothing about the dispute, who knows nothing about us, how could he be helpful? And the answer for that is A, because I get information that you don't share with each other, right? Because you're not telling each other the whole truth, and for good reasons, because otherwise it will hurt you back in court. And because I cannot decide, so I can only offer something that would be a win-win. Otherwise, nothing happened. But, the downside, and that's a potential downside, one has to admit, um, uh, 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 mediation could fail. So you could come to a mediator, you would spend time, not as much time as you would spend in court. You would spend money, not as much money as you would spend in court. But at the end of the day, there wouldn't be a decision, because this is not how this thing works. It's not about deciding who's right and who's wrong. It's about trying to understand the interest of all parties involved and try to find some middle ground. Now, if there's absolutely no middle ground, like there are situations like that, maybe there's no reason to mediate. But very few are the cases
right,
where there's nothing to talk about, right?
In fact, I just want to recap to one of the first sentences that we started with, and the way that you described most of the disputes that we're observing in the market today. They're not necessarily, these really intelligent and complicated disputes, right? They may be, it's just silly ones that need to be overcome. And that's also why I referred later to sort of the miscommunication question. How do we optimize a market that will allow for mediators or mediation to be a leading idea for people that are in dispute? Because until now, if you were to ask me 30 minutes ago, Michael, what would you do if you had a really deep conflict with a business partner or somebody of that sort? I don't think that I would immediately think of mediation. Hopefully I would eventually, but it wouldn't be trivial for me.
Right. No, I think you're right. But for most people, it's not trivial. It wasn't trivial for me either. I mean, it's something that I've learned. I've been the witness to so many failed litigation. They fail even if they win. They say that the lawyers always win because they get paid either way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But clients always lose, because even if they win, for sure.
How do we optimize for the market so that it's trivial for me to think about mediation?
So a lot of it, I think, is education. People don't know, and they're not familiar with mediation. They don't understand the logic behind it. They think, we're going to go to a third party who knows nothing about a dispute. And this guy not only doesn't know anything, he cannot decide either. So it's up to us. And we tried to decide and tried to settle, but we couldn't. So why would he be able to refer? And I think, especially talking to business people, and people understand the dynamic of information gaps, of cognitive biases, they should understand, they should see the benefit, because very often the things like being overly optimistic about your kids, or having a self-serving bias, thinking that, my case is much stronger than it is, and so forth. This actually makes you go and make the wrong decisions, right? You go to court thinking that you're going to win. No one goes to court thinking, I'm going to lose. But guess what? I'm going to lose, right? And sometimes both of them lose.
Right,
because,
right.
Look, I'm representing a company where actually it was a high-tech company. We started at huge success, and one of the founders got a bit crazy. When you actually got really crazy, it's very, not too often you see something like that, but that destroyed the company because they couldn't find a business way to go together. And that was a company at a valuation of $40 million. I mean, it was ran into the ground. Just a lot of all the promise, and now they're fighting over a corpse. There's nothing there.
Wow.
The patent, a lot. It's just a tragedy. People are just invested so much in it and lost everything. And the only reason is because they failed to settle. And it's really, really hard to settle sometimes because people are so, they're trapped in their own head. They think, I see reality.
Right.
But reality is very subjective.
I love that. I obviously, we can keep talking about this for hours. I just wanted to point out, I just love the fun fact about the tenor saxophone and the jazz band. I'm a huge jazz fan myself, playing both the tenor and alto myself. So I'm already booking you for a jam session at some point. Tell me a little bit about sort of following your own curiosity and passion. How does this play into your own life? How do you maintain sort of authentic with yourself and what you want to do, which obviously ended up leading you also to mediation as well as jazz playing?
look, I keep listening to myself. Like when I'm bored and I get bored fairly quickly, I think about what I'm going to do to change that. And there's so much interesting things happening in the world. So it's always there's a new path you can take. Music. That's for me. Look, I had the first music lesson 3 years ago. I couldn't play a G. I didn't know what a G was.
Wow.
Right? I couldn't identify it on the clay. I couldn't. But now, like in 2 hours time, I have a bunch of old folks and we'll be playing together. So it's really, really nice. And I really enjoy it. It's a huge world that was open just 2 years ago. And for years I thought, well, I'm too old to start. But at the end of the day, it's really more about believing in yourself and rising to the challenge. Because, a brain is a very sophisticated machine. And it still works, even at my, age. So, I should definitely, young people, old people, look, the drummer, the drummer is a woman who's over 70 years old, who used to be a judge. Right. So, it's quite amazing to see her coming and playing the drums. Right. And okay, she's not the best drummer ever, but I'm not the best saxophone player ever. And we still enjoy it. So it's nice.
Tal, thank you so much for this awesome conversation. I loved it. Really inspiring. I think that, we talked about a lot of differences between, litigation, court, mediation. I think that part of I think the aha moment for me here is also understanding that at the end there is meaning to how quickly you understand that you're in conflict or that you have some discrepancy in reality perceptions. Sort of obviously, if everybody in the world understood that we perceive reality very subjectively and it's not necessarily the reality, then things would be much better. But it sounds to me that also mediation has the opportunity to enter much sooner and quicker into the flow of a conflict. And obviously, we're talking about cognitive psychology and emotions. The more the conflict persists, the more hardwired we become with our own perspective of reality. And so I'm excited to read, what you published, and it's fascinating to think that there may be a market failure here. So Tal, thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking.